This is Gaming Through the Ages, and today we're taking a look at Final Fantasy Type 0 for the PlayStation Portable. With the recent announcement that Type 0 will be coming out in HD for consoles and officially translated for a Western audience, I thought it was high time I share my thoughts on this game. Seeing as this game came out back in 2011, many fans had lost hope that any official translation would ever come. So much so that a fan translation for the PSP version has been created, and the game can be patched if you're running custom firmware on your PSP. I've not delved into this much myself, to say the least, but there are tons of tutorials and videos on the net for anyone interested in going that route. Fans that have been pining for more traditional Final Fantasy games will be happy to know that Type 0 features a world map and an airship you eventually get to control. However, it also features an action RPG combat system, which, while reminiscent of Crisis Core, is pretty much its own thing. There are 14 characters you can choose to use, and each is extremely different from one another. You create a party of 3 of these characters and control one at a time, but can switch between them on the fly. Should one of these characters die, you can pull in another from the reserved characters outside of your battle party. Only the characters in your battle party gain experience from encounters, adding difficulty to an already difficult game. In fact, Type 0's difficulty gained some notoriety, and as a result, an easier difficulty setting is being introduced into the HD versions of the game. Characters can be customized through spending ability points they receive from level ups on new abilities. Each character has standard abilities like magic, but also abilities unique to their character, some of which are automatically added to their combat repertoire and don't need to be assigned. Magic spells are leveled up separately by spending Phantoma on different aspects, such as power. There is only Healing Ice, Thunder, and Fire available as the basic magic types, but they are further delegated into groups named after guns. Each element can be assigned as a shotgun, rifle, bomb, missile, or rocket, with the effect pretty much being as the name implies. Additionally, holding down buttons for magic along with other commands tends to up their strength relative to how long you hold the button. During combat, occasionally green or red circles will show up on enemy targets. These signify critical hits and instant kills, and learning when they show up on enemies allows you to exploit their attack patterns in order to land these devastating hits. Enemy corpses can then be targeted again and attacked one last time, often damaging other enemies around them to collect Phantoma for your magic. You can also sacrifice your current character for the duration of a mission in favor of a summon, which you can control much like the characters in the game is presented in mission format. Essentially, you're given missions which you embark on to progress the main story. There are also side missions which sometimes involve tactical battles to liberate towns on the world map. They're sort of like little RTS matches. These work well for the handheld format, as I often found myself picking up the PSP, completing a mission, and then setting it down. You can even redo previous missions from the main menu of the second disc to gain additional experience. Speaking of the second disc, it contains most of the game because it contains the multiplayer feature of Type 0. When in missions, other players can fight alongside you. I was never able to try this out since I live on the other side of the world from most people who are playing the game in its prime. However, I have talked to some who did, and they enjoyed the feature. You can select to have members of the Academy Class 0 is from jump into these missions to lend you a helping hand instead of selecting that other users have the ability. Members of the Academy outside of the 14 protagonists can level up through training you can do while the PSP is in sleep mode. Even your active character can gain a few levels this way, but it's capped at 2 or 3 levels in one go. This doesn't stop Type 0 from being grind heavy, however. Expect to spend a lot of time fighting if you want to do everything. Fortunately, the battle system is fast-paced and fun. Final Fantasy Type 0 is one of the darker games in the series. It's noticeably more violent than most other games, as presented in the opening cutscene, and its overall plot is political by nature. There are 4 kingdoms, each harboring the power of a crystal. One of the kingdoms, which has the most military strength, gets too big for its britches and goes on the offensive. The attacked nation has the power of Class 0, the characters you play as throughout the story, an elite group of students who can use magic without having to tap into the crystal, but at the cost of their memories. If someone dies, they are immediately forgotten. This is a really mature and thought-provoking element to be present to such a degree in a Final Fantasy game. The story takes some dramatic turns and is a good ride, but you can't see all of what's going on unless you play through a New Game Plus, where additional story elements are revealed. Final Fantasy Type 0's scope is pretty incredible for a PSP game. The world map is scaled to the player, and it makes for vast stretches of terrain, but it also means you will spend a lot of time just running if you don't use the game's airship terminal or chocobos. The game does look incredible on the PSP, especially the cutscenes. The biggest issue I have with the game is the battle camera. It has a tendency to go behind things or just default to nonsensical positions. In such a fast-paced game, where there are certain enemies that can one-shot your characters, this can be annoying. Likewise, the weather effects can hinder visibility, but I didn't have a means to fight them like I did the camera, so they didn't feel like a struggle, and as a result were less annoying than the camera. Type 0's music is a blast from the past. It's got the nostalgia factor. The prelude tune and the chocobo music alone will feel familiar to old-time fans, but there's a multitude of other fantastic scores, with a handful harkening back to older games. Overall, Final Fantasy Type 0 is an amazing PSP game for anyone who likes action RPGs, but it's not perfect, and I'm afraid those who have waited this long may be expecting too much from it. However, if you like mature stories and want a more grown-up Final Fantasy game, this is it, and I'm thrilled it's finally getting localized for fans out here.